There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door. Open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right, let the King of Glory in. Open up the door starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he heard a sound behind him, and he said, "Behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven, and I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, 'Come up here. I will show you some things which must take place.'" That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live, from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good day, everybody. Andy White here. You are about to hear the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain. Thanks for tuning in, and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for catching this brand new edition of Open Up the Doors. Hey, I am streaming live over on my Facebook Open Up the Doors page over at facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. If you want to join in the conversation over there, let me know where you are watching from, where you are listening from. Do a big meet and greet over there. And if you've never liked the Open Up the Doors Facebook page, for those of you who are on Facebook, please like the page and join the fellowship, join the friendships that are developing over there. And of course, always keep up and just keep up with what's going on here as we make the journey through this Christian walk in so many different levels and ways. Outside of Facebook, of course, you can follow me on the Truth Social Network. If you're on Truth Social, just look me up at AJ White. Real simple, that's the handle, AJ White. Follow me over there. I also have a Open Up the Doors group page over there as well on Truth Social. I'll mention that more in detail later on. We are streaming all over the internet, all around the fruited plain, all around the spherical globe through our Faith FM app, which you can download for free for whatever platform you have, whether you have the Android platform or the Apple platform. Download your respective app for Faith FM. Look up Faith FM in Sag Harbor, because there are other ones around the country, and you'll be able to tune in 24/7, all of the programming here on Faith FM. It's a great little resource, great little tool to have. I mention it to people all the time when I'm out of the local area here where the Faith FM signal is on the radio, of course. But it's great. It's a great tool to have. I am planning on going to the phones in the second hour of today's broadcast. If you'd like to be part of the broadcast, write down the number right now, 631-725-2069, 631-725-2069, if you'd like to be part of the program today and call in with your questions, your comments. Love for you to do that. All right, so let's get to it. Always have a lot on my plate. That's always a given. But I want to share with you today about some of the forces that are at work and how they are at work through various means and methods, really, that we see things in the news every day. We see different aspects of how the government is trying to take control of our lives in different ways. And some of these things seem to be disparate and separated, but they're not. They're not. They're all connected. And I want to show you how they're connected and really what is the spirit that is working behind all of these things that you might think, well, that's just some other news story. That's just some other governmental thing. But I'm going to begin here with this as I begin to weave all these things together. Let me begin here. Let me begin in the beginning, in Genesis. Because from the very beginning, from the very start in the garden, man, you and I, humanity, has been tempted to believe he can become God. You will be like God, the father of lies, told Eve. We read in Genesis, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that was pleasing to the eyes, pleasant to the eyes, and that it was a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. That little phrase, and when she looked at the fruit of the tree, she saw it would make one wise. It really kind of leaped at me in a fresh way the other day. Because the wisdom that resulted from her disobedience wasn't the wisdom from above that James talks about. We can get wisdom from God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. See, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. She disobeyed God. She lost momentarily, through her temptation, the fear of the Lord. So that the wisdom that resulted wasn't the wisdom from above, but as James says, that wisdom did not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, and demonic. We can do a whole study just on that earthly wisdom that is sensual, that is demonic. But it all goes back to Satan's lie in the temptation. You shall be like God. And from the garden to the Tower of Babel's audacity, where men said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves. Remember that phrase a little bit later on in the broadcast. Let us make a name for ourselves. Let's build something. See, man has been deceived and deluded into thinking he could make of himself his own God, that he can make of himself a name for himself. And that doesn't mean simply to have a nice name. It really means to be self-exalted. The name of the Lord is a high tower, but man wants to make a Tower of Babel with his name on it to be a high tower. So mankind was deceived in the garden through earthly sensual wisdom, and therefore professing themselves wise, they become fools. And in their wisdom, they do not know God, the true living God. And in their foolishness, they think they are God. They bought into the lie. There's a God complex in humanity. There's a God complex that drives, in particular, tyrants and despotic rulers. The satanic lie that drives the antichrist spirit, or really is empowered by the antichrist spirit, which is behind the forces that want to control the world, that want to, let's build us a city and a high tower. It's talking about infrastructure systems. Like I said, I'm going to try and weave some of these ideas together. But again, it comes from a God complex. I decided the other day, as I was thinking about these things, to look up if there was actually any kind of definition for what a God complex is. I've heard the terminology all my life. I was wondering if there was actual definition or an actual clinical definition. It pretty much said what I figured it would say. A God complex is a pattern in which an individual believes that they have great power, ability, infallibility, influence, and they are superior to others. And they look to exercise extreme power or control over others. Someone operating under a disposition of extreme narcissism. We might say a person who's extremely narcissistic has a God complex. But there's never enough power and influence to satisfy a person with a God complex. Once they taste of power, they never let it go, and they always seek to garner more. They yearn for total control. That's what the God complex is all about. The insatiable hunger for total control. And man has a God complex. Not everybody to the same degree, but to one degree or another. When we're fallen in our unregenerate state, it should never be found, obviously, in a Christian, in a regenerated heart. But I'm talking about fallen humanity in the aggregate. Because man thinks, unregenerate man, again, that's the framework I'm speaking here. Unregenerate man thinks he's wiser than God. Man thinks he's more moral than God. Man thinks he's more compassionate than God. How often do you hear people say, I wouldn't serve a God like that? When you start talking to them about the God of the Bible, I can't believe in a God like that. They think they're morally superior. That's where that's coming from. They don't like the real, true, and living God as he is described in the Bible, as he describes himself. So man thinks he's more compassionate than God. Man thinks he's more loving than God. Man thinks he's more just than God. And in all of that, man ultimately thinks he can play God. And here's a tragic example of this. It's a heartbreaking story that I posted earlier this week, but it really exemplifies in a real life situation, in a real tragic situation, all of these things that I'm talking about. Because in Britain, in the UK, this past week, the courts in Britain ruled that a hospital could remove a newborn baby girl's life support without her parents' consent. I read this report out of Life News, which is really, really a good newspaper, for lack of a better term, internet paper, internet blog. Life News, it just got a lot of really good articles in it. But Life News reported that even a Vatican hospital had stepped up and agreed to provide care for an 8-month-old baby girl named Indy Gregory in Britain, where a British court ruled her life support could be revoked even though her parents were fighting to save her life, were looking to give her treatment. But even the Vatican stepping in wasn't enough to save this little girl. It wasn't enough for the British courts to rule in their favor. Talk about a God complex. This little girl, Indy, suffered. Unfortunately, I have to use the past tense because they pulled the plug on her last Saturday and she suffocated to death. 8-month-old baby. But she suffered from what the British doctors said was a rare degenerative mitochondrial disease. That's a big word. Mitochondrial disease. And she had been receiving life-sustaining treatment on a ventilator at Queen's Medical Center in Nottingham, England. But those doctors gave up hope on her, and it turned into a legal feud between the doctors and the hospital and their desire to remove her from life support and her parents' desires, of course, to continue medical treatment. And listen to this. This is, in my worldview, this is appalling. This is demonic. A judge ruled that it was in the child's best interest, this 8-month-old child who couldn't speak for herself. It was ruled by a judge that it was in the child's quote-unquote best interest to be taken off life support. If that's not a God complex, please tell me what is. Indy's parents, of course, as I said already, appealed the ruling, but the British courts dismissed their challenge. And this is what they said in the appeal, the courts. The grounds of appeal are entirely without merit. Lord Justice Peter. It's even funny how they call themselves lords over there in England, but I won't digress. The grounds of appeal are entirely without merit, Lord Justice Peter Jackson said. Entirely without merit? In other words, the parents have nothing to say in the matter. Their appeal is without merit. He said this, although this is a legal decision, it is taken with the full awareness of the deeply sensitive question that lies at the heart of the proceedings. The deeply sensitive question is life. Life is a precious gift, and we need to do everything we can to protect the life, especially for the innocent, especially when the Bible says to stand up for the cause of the poor and needy when they can't speak up for themselves. And there were other doctors, there were other experts in England who are not in England, I'm sorry, in Italy, in Rome, who were saying, you know what, we think that was a misdiagnosis. We think that we can actually help this child. We think that she might have something else. And the Italian government actually offered to pay for it. The British didn't have anything to lose. Italy gave this 8-month-old baby Italian citizenship by fiat, by Italian law. They gave her Italian citizenship so they could say, all right, she's an Italian citizen. Fly her over to here. Fly her over to here. We'll take care of her. And the British government still denied it. The judge said that Italy's desire to bring the little girl there for treatment under Hague Convention rules was, quote, wholly misconceived, and listen to this, not in the spirit of the convention. What? What? Their appeal for this baby's life was not in the spirit of the Hague Convention over there in Europe? What did he even mean by that? Yeah, I thought of this passage in Scripture as I was reading this, because as the Lord said on one occasion, not Lord Justice Peter Jackson, but the Lord Jesus Christ, when the Pharisees had challenged him about the law, about if it was lawful on the Sabbath to heal, Jesus said to them, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy? That's the issue. Is it lawful? Forget about what you think the law says. Forget about your misconstruction and misapplication of the law. The law of God was never meant for harm. The law of God was never meant for harm. And that's why Jesus is challenging them. Is it lawful to do good or to do evil, even on the Sabbath? To save life or to destroy it? And when Jesus had looked around at them all, because they were dumbfounded, he said to the man who was in the midst of this controversy, stretch out your hand. It was the Sabbath, and he did so. And his hand was restored. To compare apples to apples, in some ways, this man had an incurable malady that couldn't be fixed. This 8-month-old baby had an incurable malady, as far as the doctors thought, that couldn't be fixed. But God's in the business of life. God's in the business of miracles. So the Lord said, stretch out your hand, and it was restored as whole as the other. Now, did they all clap and rejoice? Wow, praise God. No, the Pharisees were filled with rage, we're told in Luke chapter 6, I'm sorry. They were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. The same spirit today resides in men, in leaders who think they have a God complex. Who don't think they have a God complex, actually do have a God complex. Don't you question my interpretation of the law. What you want to do is not in the correct interpretation of the law, says I. I mean, why in heaven's name would the UK be refusing to let the parents take their daughter to Italy for treatment? What am I missing here? Like I said, even the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, who's very pro-life, she got involved. And the Italian Prime Minister wrote a letter to the UK's Lord Chancellor, calling for Italy and Britain to work together on facilitating this little girl Indy's transfer to Rome. Request denied. What? Of course, the father of this little girl was devastated. The guy's name was Dean Gregory. And he said for the hospital and the British courts to simply ignore the offer from the Italian government is disgraceful. And he tried to appeal again. I appealed to the British government to allow Indy to come to Italy before it is too late. As a father, I have never asked or begged for anything in my life. He was begging. He was groveling for the life of his little girl. I am begging the British government to please help prevent our daughter's life from being taken away. What good reason? What good reason can there be to detain this little girl against the wishes of her parents when treatment was being offered in Rome, when doctors in Rome saying, we think we can help her? As I said, sadly, tragically, this little baby was taken off the ventilator last week. She suffocated to death. It's a tragic story with a tragic end because of judges and courts that have deemed themselves to be gods with the absolute power to decide over the wishes of loving parents what is in the best interest of a baby who can't speak for herself, and to override the appeal of even doctors who were more than willing to attempt to save the life of this little girl, or at the very least prolong the life of the infant. Folks, let me say this before I go to a break. This story is a microcosm. It is a personal, anecdotal incident that speaks to and illustrates the larger and far more reaching agenda of the spirit of antichrist that works through those who have a God complex, whose goal is absolute power and desirous of absolute total control over every aspect of your life. Make no mistake, my friends, this is spiritual warfare, all of it.
All the nations are gonna be shaken. Bow down and we kiss the sun away. Bow down and we kiss the sun away. Bow down and we kiss the sun.
Bow down and kiss the sun. Taken right out of the Psalms. Welcome back. Andy White here on the radio, tearing down strongholds. You are listening to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. So bow down and kiss the sun. I'm planning on, but I'm not sure I'm going to have enough time. I was planning on actually going through Psalm 2 a little bit later on, but go read Psalm 2, but don't do it now. Do it later. Let me get back to what I have on my plate here, because I got so much here. Years ago, when my kids were young, I'm going to make you laugh when I say this, but there was a TV cartoon that we used to watch together as a family. It was kind of funny. It was definitely funny. It was definitely cute. It was a kids' TV show, but we watched it together as a family. It was called Pinky and the Brain. I don't know how many people even heard of that. It was kind of a, I don't know. I don't think it was a very well-known or popular cartoon, but it was funny. Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain were these laboratory mice, and Pinky was a sidekick to a mad scientist mouse whose driving desire and pursuit was to take over the world. Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain. One is genius, the other insane. That was the theme song. My kids would walk around the house. They'd be singing, Pinky and the Brain, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other insane. Memories. But every episode of the cartoon was basically the same thing. It was how Brain was going to take over the world. His sidekick, Pinky would ask every episode, "Geez, Brain, what do you want to do tonight?" "The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try and take over the world." It was a funny cartoon. It was cute. And of course, they always failed in their pursuit to take over the world. But now on a more serious note, in light of all of the advancements that have been made in AI technology, there are mad scientists who are trying to take over the world. Really, there are. But with all the advancements made with AI and technology, combined with that very organic and innate desire to take over the world, that innate desire to be like God, when you combine all of those things, that innate desire of megalomaniacs to literally want to take over the world, when you combine the abilities of technology along with the supernatural demonic power that is behind the antichrist spirit, we are quickly approaching that time when someone's who's not a cartoonish mouse like the Brain, but a very real, satanically possessed individual, which the Bible calls the beast, will, albeit for a short time, try and take over the world and have total control. We read in Revelation that all the world marveled and followed the beast, so they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war against him?" No, it won't be cute and funny like the fictional cartoon of Pinky and the Brain. But it's a very real biblical and diabolical fulfillment of the false prophet and the beast. One is a genius, the other's insane. And both the genius and the insanity will be driven by Satan himself. For the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Speaking of insanity, again, the ultimate achievement of man's God complex is AI. AI is being created in man's own image and likeness, which, of course, is morally bankrupt and corrupt. And again, here's Exhibit A. Did you hear about this one? Read this. This was actually in the BBC. This was an article in the BBC in the technology section. But there was a lot of things coming out of Britain in this broadcast. I just realized that. There was a recent experiment, very recent. It was a test with AI regarding investing in the stock market using insider trading, which is illegal. And the AI, it did this, and then the AI lied about what it did. Listen to this from this report in the BBC. In a demonstration at the UK's AI Safety Summit, a bot used made-up insider information to make an illegal purchase of stocks without telling the firm. When asked, they asked the AI if it had used insider trading, it denied the fact. The AI lied. Lied. Oh. This, according to the people doing the research, this is a quote, "This is a demonstration of a real AI model deceiving its users on its own without being instructed to do so. Increasingly autonomous and capable AIs that deceive human overseers could lead to the loss of human control," it says in its report. You think? I'm laughing, but this is where this is now. This isn't even where this is going. This is where this is now. I mean, I've been saying for years now, a good 7 years now, can you imagine what a demon-possessed AI would be capable of doing? And these people want AI to monitor and surveil our lives. AI is being programmed right now by these wokesters in Silicon Valley who are all embedded in their psyches with DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity, DEI. They're programming DEI into AI. Should do a new little jingle here. DEI and A guy go together like a horse and carriage. The spirit of Antichrist in all these. Let us make a city. Let us make a tower that reaches to the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves. On another front, different from that, but being controlled by the same spirit. On another front, in the let's take total control agenda, we have the industrial censorship complex, as I heard one pundit refer to it last week. Back in January of 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower gave the nation an ominous warning in his farewell speech about what he believed was a threat to the American government. He called it back then the military-industrial complex, a dangerous and formidable union of defense contractors and armed forces. In that speech, Eisenhower said, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist." Very famous speech. Most of us have all heard of the military-industrial complex. But he said, yes, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists because fallen man has a God complex. Back in 2018, I did a broadcast where I said the military-industrial complex had been replaced with something I termed the media corporatist complex. Now, this past week, when I heard someone on Newsmax use the term the industrial censorship complex, I immediately thought of that broadcast I did 5 or 6 years ago. Slightly different phraseology, but it amounts to the same thing. Because at this very moment, even as I speak, the Biden administration is looking to seize control of the internet. And it has Obama's fingerprints all over it. They're seeking the complete centralization of internet and internet speech. This is a protocol. This is something that the FCC is looking to implement. Let me quote from the article. Biden is calling it digital equity. Let me read this quote. I believe this came from Brendan Carr, who is a FCC commissioner. He said, President Biden's plan hands the administrative state, that would be the deep state, effective control of all internet services and infrastructure in the country. This is one of the commissioners of the FCC. He's saying this. Never before in the roughly 40-year history of the public internet has the FCC, or any federal agency for that matter, claimed this degree of control over it. He said President Biden's plan calls for the FCC to apply a far-reaching set of government controls that the agency has not applied to any technology in the modern era. FCC Brendan Carr said it last Monday that the agency's proposed quote-unquote digital discrimination rule would micromanage every part of the internet. Folks, when you hear the term digital equity coming out of this administration, think authoritarianism, because that's what it is. The FCC commissioner said that this plan would give the FCC, and the Biden's plan includes price controls over the internet. In other words, they're going to control private companies. The FCC can regulate broadband pricing and even ISPs, internet service providers, ability. In other words, they're going to tell these companies how much they're allowed to make. The FCC arrogates to itself the power. There's that God complex. That's just a fancy way of saying they have a God complex. The FCC arrogates to itself the power to review and determine the lawfulness and promotional pricing and discounts. It even puts the use of credit checks squarely on in the crosshair. Of course, Congress did not give the FCC the power to do any of this. Forget about this little thing called Congress, who under the Constitution has authority to, either vote in for these type of things or not. But the FCC is just creating all of these new policies out of whole cloth. Folks, this amounts, plain and simply, this amounts to a communistic authoritarian control over the internet. It's a complete centralization of the internet and ultimately internet speech. So, at a time when there's an organized media and governmental propaganda machine being utilized to frame the narrative of a world and societal events in order to control what people think, at the same time that we're already being bombarded with propaganda and we need to fight against it in the marketplace of free ideas, at the same time that's going on, the free speech and censorship of those with opposing views and viewpoints, as well as actual truth and facts for that matter, are being censored and shut down. We've seen this happening, of course, for years now. We've been talking about this for a number of years. It really began pre-COVID, but it got ramped up during COVID. But just when you thought things would kind of settle down, maybe get back to some sense of normalcy in the marketplace of ideas post-COVID, nope. The censorship is coming back with a vengeance. The corporate industrial censorship complex. Let's just call it the mind-controlled complex. It's up and it's running. And it's not that it's just censorship. It's meant to be mind control. It's an agenda to control the narrative, to control the flow of information in order to control the masses. For they that control the information control the masses. I hope you begin to see the pattern, the thing I'm trying to do here, because all these things are being woven together and they're all converging together, to mix metaphors, in order to bring about the total control of all infrastructure systems for the ultimate goals of the coming man of sin, the one who will epitomize a God complex, who will be revealed in his own time. Stick around, folks. I will be back to wrap up this first hour in a few minutes. Here's Tom Golly. Let your heart be found.
Step up, all you broken hearted.
Fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in that peak, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. All right, I got a few minutes left, everybody. Let me get through some broadcast memo notes here and try and wrap up with a few thoughts before we get into the second hour. But the first hour of this broadcast re-airs today at 3 p.m. Thursday. And 1 p.m. on Saturday are the re-air times if you'd like to tune in, if you missed any part of the broadcast, or even more than that, if you've missed any part of the broadcast or just want to hear it again and share it around to those who you think might benefit from it and be interested in it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel. Those are my video platforms. Just look me up either on YouTube or Rumble, Andy White, Open Up the Doors. And on YouTube, hit the little bell there. You'll be notified when we do upload these archived broadcasts. Please hit the little thumbs up as well when you watch a broadcast, when you watch a video. Hit the little thumbs up both in Rumble and on YouTube. It just increases the algorithm's ability to see activity makes it show up in the news feed better, and it's all about reaching people. That's what it's all about. I also have a group page, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, over on Truth Social at AJ White. If you're on the platform, just look up the Open Up the Doors group page, and I would love for you to, if you haven't yet, please, come on over and fellowship on the group page. It's an extension of this broadcast, and you can post there. It works just like the group pages on Facebook. Except you won't be tagged with, all kinds of like things being taken down because Facebook, a bunch of fascists, and they don't like certain things you post. None of that happens over at Truth. Pretty much, it's, for the most part, it's completely free speech, non-censorship over there. And I would like the group page to grow and really become, as I said, an extension of this broadcast. Also want to mention one thing, because I promised a friend of mine I would do it. For all of you local folks here on the east end of Long Island, or even anywhere across Long Island, if you want to travel, starting tonight at Living Waters Church in Riverhead, starting tonight, Thursday night, November 16th, through the 19th, through the weekend, Living Waters Church is having a conference called the Ignite Conference, with different, speakers, Pastor George Dupre and Pastor Steve Inuchili. I can never pronounce this brother's name right. Steve Inuchili. I know him, but I always stumble over his name. Brother Steve, I'm sorry for stumbling over your name. Anyway, anyone who wants to come out to the Ignite Conference, service starts at 7 p.m. at Living Waters Church in Riverhead. It's 24 Shade Tree Lane, for a time of faith building through praise and worship, through preaching, prayer. As the promo says, it's time to ignite, and I would agree with that. Light a fire, Lord, light a fire in the hearts. Rekindle the fires in the hearts. All right, again, moving right along, I'm going to go to the phones. If you call in, 631-725-2069, 631-725-2069, if you would like to call in the second hour of today's broadcast. And I've got a whole list of other news reports here talking about CBDCs, the central bank digital currency, which will, of course, be the centerpiece of a totalitarian system. But I am running out of time. I had a bunch of scriptures here I wanted to get to, but I'm going to try and just condense it all down. One good thing on the bright side, as far as America goes, as far as all the talk about a central bank digital currency, there is pushback in the Congress against it. And the House Financial Services Committee last week passed a bill that would stop the Federal Reserve from working and instituting a central bank digital currency here in the U.S. That's good news. That there's pushback against this centralized surveillance banking system, and that's good news. At least for the moment here in the U.S., a CBDC seems to be at least being pushed back. How long that remains, for how long that pushback remains to be seen. But we're not going to just roll over and allow these people to take over our lives. But we do know prophetically that in the very least, I should say, we do know in the very least, the kingdom of the beast will have total control over its economy. The book of Daniel, speaking of the antichrist, says, the king of the north, he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver. And we know in Revelation it says that he will cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except him who has the mark of the beast. And like I said, I had a whole slew of scriptures here. But at the top of the broadcast, I said to you, remember what they said at the Tower of Babel. Let us make a name for ourselves. Revelation here says that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The mark or the name of the beast, for he seeks to make his name great. For he will say in his heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I also will sit on the mount of the congregation. That's the holy place. On the farthest sides of the north. That's the temple. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. The lie from the garden. We often attribute this passage in Isaiah 14 to Satan, and it is, but it's even something more than that. It's the prophetic description of the heart of the man of sin, also known as the antichrist. We see other similar descriptions of the antichrist in Daniel. Daniel 8 says that he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity, because he's taken over the economy. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, the Antichrist. He shall do according to his own will. He shall exalt and magnify himself above every god and speak blasphemies against the God of gods. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. And we can go on and we can go on and we can go on. You could do a survey, read through Ezekiel 28. The prince of Tyre and his relationship to the king of Tyre. It's a picture in Ezekiel 28 of the Antichrist and of Satan. Satan wants total control. He will finally get his wish, but only for a short time. When he possesses the man of sin, the son of perdition, the prince of Tyre, who embraces and believes the lie that was first spoken in the garden, you shall be like God. Go back and read Ezekiel 28. But make no mistake about it, my friends. This is where the world is heading. It is a spirit of Antichrist, and that spirit its goal is total control over what you think, total control over what you say, total control over what you are allowed to believe, total control over what you earn and over what you are allowed to spend it on, and most ultimately, total control over what and who you will worship. All who dwell on the earth will worship the beast, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb. There's only one who's worthy of total controls of our life, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. I have a whole lot more here. Maybe I'll pick it up in the second hour, but I'm out of time for this first hour. But stick around, folks. We're going to get into this some more. Call in 631-725-2069. We'll be right back. In the meantime, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. Keep it right here on Faith FM, folks. Give me a call, and we'll continue this conversation when I come back after the news.